are live and recording. My name is Kellyanne, and I'm a bookseller with Mysterious Galaxy. And tonight I have the absolute pleasure of introducing our two guest authors. Tonight we have Dianne Freeman with us. She is the author of the Countess of Harley Mystery series. Her latest book, A Fiancée's Guide to First Wives and Murder, which is the fourth installment in that series, came out not too long ago. And in conversation, we have Erica Ruth Neubauer. Erica is the author of the Jane Wunderly Mysteries, the second installment of which, Murder at Wedgefield Manor, came out earlier this year. So tonight we have a fun event in store for you guys, talking about all things cozy mysteries. We've got great authors here. They're both award-winning authors, award-nominated authors. So before we get started, a little tour of Crowdcast. On the right-hand side, there is the chat section where you're welcome to say hello to our authors. Below us, there is a green button that says buy books with signed personalized book plates. That'll take you to the event page for tonight, where you can buy either those two books mentioned or any of the other books from those series. And you can also request signed personalized book plates from either of our authors by including that in your order comments. And last but not least, before I hop off, there is the Ask a Question button down at the very bottom. If you click that, you can type in whatever questions you have for each of our authors, and they will answer them in the second half of the event. So with that, I'm going to turn my screen off and let the event get started. You guys have a wonderful event. I'll see you at the end.
Thanks, Kellyanne.
Thank you, Kellyanne. Dianne, it's so nice to talk to you.
You too. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So I love this. I love your series, period. But I just really love this book. Can you give the audience a taste of what this one is about?
Sure, and thank you. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. A Fiancée's Guide to First Wives and Murder. It takes place, Frances and George are finally able to announce their engagement. They've gotten Frances's sister married off, and they're planning their wedding. They're doing an engagement party, and the only thing that stands between them and a lifetime of wedded bliss is his wife, who she shows up with Inspector Delaney almost on Frances's doorstep, claiming to be Mrs. George Hazelton. And Frances thinks this woman is delusional. I mean, she's wrong. She's just crazy. But a day or two later, when she ends up dead in Frances's garden, she and George become the prime suspects. So in addition to warding off the scandal of George having a fictitious first wife, they also have to prove that they did not murder her. So this is the first time they're working to prove that they didn't do it. It was a really fun book to write. This was my pandemic book, and it kind of kept me company.
Oh, that's awesome. I think I'm getting some. Let me try to get rid of it. So I love that you brought in Russian royalty for this book. How much of that was based on fact?
I'm sorry. You are getting some feedback. I didn't catch that.
It's really bad. Can you hear me now?
While you're working on that, I'm sorry?
Can you hear me now?
I hear you. Yep. Beautifully.
Okay. So I loved how you brought in the Russian royalty for this novel, because his supposed first wife claims to be an illegitimate, part of the Russian royalty. How much of that was based on actual fact?
Just the two characters are real people. Alexei Alexandrovich, the name and patronymic Romanov, and Michael Mikhailovich Romanov are real people. What they do in this book is completely fictitious, except that Michael Mikhailovich did visit London and the royal family in November of 1899. And I spend a lot of time just going through old newspapers, and when I saw that, okay, November, I'll set this in November, that would be great. Now, how can I work that into my storyline? And it made me a little nervous. This is the first time I've used real people, but I just kind of tried to get to know both of them as much as possible to kind of portray them as close as to the way I've been able to kind of learn them. Michael Mikhailovich was just kind of a jovial, happy-go-lucky guy. And Alexei was the womanizing naval commander. And it was a joy to write them. I haven't used real people before, and I think I'm going to continue to do that because it was a lot of fun.
Super fun.
I had a character in the back of my mind. I don't know if you do this, Erica, if you have people that kind of are waiting for a story to use them. And I had one in the back of my mind where I thought, God, I've just been waiting for a storyline for her. And with using the Russians, it came out perfectly. She's based on a real person as well, and that would be Irina Tesky. Not too long ago, I had a neighbor, and every time I saw her, it was like she thought she had met me again for the first time. And she would start introducing herself, and she would tell me that she's related to Queen Victoria, and she was an aspiring actress in her youth, and she married a World War II hero, and she was just a couple of years older than me, so that would have made her husband like 30 plus years older than her, which I thought, okay, maybe, but that's a little weird. And then let's see what else. Oh, she owned a restaurant in California, and they regularly entertained Bob Dylan and Mick Jagger. And oh yes, they had a place in Hawaii, a plantation, and her husband died in a hang gliding accident, and da-da-da. This went on and on every time I saw her. So Erica's going to reconnect. She did that really fast. So anyway, one day after we talked, she happened to mention her husband's name. And so I went and got on my laptop, Googled both their names together, and every single thing she told me was true. Except I don't know if she's related to Queen Victoria. I did not find that out, but everything else was, and it was just the tip of the iceberg. She immediately went from being maybe crazy to the most fascinating person I have ever met. And like I said, she didn't even tell me the half of it. There was so much. So my husband came home like, I can't believe this. Everything she's saying is true now. So I just, and you know, life went on, and she remained herself and I remained myself, and we remained neighbors. And then we moved, and I thought, I have got to use her in a story because this is nuts. You know, the things that she would say and the fact that it was layered one right after the other just really led you to believe, can't be. So when I saw okay, we've got Russian royals. So why don't I have somebody saying she's related to them? I'm going to bring her into the story. What other kind of crazy thing could it be? It's like, oh, I know. She's George's first wife. Let's go with that. So it kind of worked itself through. And because I felt like I really knew these characters, it just made it a real pleasure to write this story.
Absolutely. That's insane.
It's insane.
Like, I'm curious, when you write your characters, do you pull pictures of what they look like? Do you have a mental picture of what they look like, or you just kind of winging it?
I probably do. I don't really think of it too much. I'm sure I do. You know, I've got an idea of like Francis, and obviously Irina would have looked just like my neighbor, right? You know, significantly younger. But yeah, I don't tend to describe my characters really well. But yeah, they're pretty clear to me. What do you?
I
have
do
a
not.
Good idea?
I know some people like pull pictures and like keep them up, and I don't do that. Like I have a good idea of what I think they look like, but it's just in my head.
Mm-hmm. So when people say, if it was a movie, who would star as these characters?
For me, like I have no idea who. I'll be honest, I have no idea who some of the young actors are today. So in my head, they're like actors from like the 30s that I know. I'd be like, I can cast this with Rock Hudson, or like, you know.
That's so funny because I always feel like in my head, George is kind of a cross between Cary Grant and William Powell. You know, and I'm like, okay. But But who would play them today? I don't know.
I don't know who they are.
Find me a cross between Cary Grant and William Powell.
Exactly. Oh, I love both of them.
I know they're my favorites. So of course George had to. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. We have similar writing styles too. Now that I think about it. Both our likes of movies.
Yeah.
And the very short first draft.
Yes. Tell people how we do it.
Okay. This is how we do it.
This is how we do it.
Well, all right. There is a slight difference. I do have to do an outline.
You do an outline.
Because we have the same editor too.
We do.
Do you not have to do an outline?
I do. The problem is that I turn it into him after I've already written the book. So I write the book, and then I go through and I write the outline, and then I turn in the outline. And I'm like, I hope it's good because this is what the book is.
Yeah. Oh boy, yeah. What if he said no?
I'd be
my God. That would be horrible.
It would be really bad.
I do the outline first.
That's a better way to do it. It's a better way.
I tend to I plot out the crime. So that way I kind of know where everybody is at various stages of the crime. So it makes it really easy to do the outline. From there, I write a first draft that is not much more than an outline. It's like a 50,000 word first draft, really short, sometimes maybe 60.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just start layering in the characters. By the end of the first draft, because I use a lot. All right, let me back up. I have a pretty big cast of characters for every book, but some of them are repeat characters. There's always a few new ones. And by the end of the first draft, I've got a real good feel for who these people are. So things can change in the second draft. Just because they wouldn't really do that. They would do it this way, or I like them better doing this. So a little bit of the plot can change, but then I layer in what their characters really are like, layer in some background and some setting. And then the third draft, a little bit more. The fourth draft, let's make an attempt at some good grammar and punctuation. And then like a last one to polish it. And from what I've heard from you, you do something very similar.
Very similar. My first drafts are usually all plot and dialogue. And then I come back in and I layer in all of the, the description and the setting and I should talk about the weather and I should mention this. And I layer that in subsequent drafts. Mm-hmm. Very similar.
What about research? Do you have it all researched before you write it?
No, I did for the first one, for Mina House. I definitely had that mostly researched before I wrote it. But for subsequent ones, I kind of have guessed a lot about stuff and then went back and then kind of made a list of this is all the stuff you need to figure out. So you need to go research this stuff and then kind of adjust accordingly. Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know until,
So you start writing it.
Yeah.
And then you write something and think, is that true?
Yeah.
I don't even know. So yeah, I do the same thing. My first and sometimes the second draft too, because I do it on Word, has that whole sidebar of notes. You better check on this. You better do this. You better do that.
That's really smart. I just do it in a separate document. I'm I just have I have a lot of Word documents going at once. But the notes, that's smarter. That's smarter, Diane.
That one.
Yeah.
So I know I've kind of probably really screwed you up by asking you a bunch of questions. Sorry about that.
Not at all. I just, lost my place. What made you pick this time period specifically?
What did make me pick this time period? Well, I kind of got hemmed into this the last quarter of the 19th century because mostly I was fascinated by the American heiress, the transatlantic weddings between American heiresses and European aristocracy. And, it was something I had read about. I saw it with Edith Wharton and kind of went, oh, that's clever. And then I found out Consuelo Vanderbilt was a real person. And then later on, I'm like, oh my God, this really happened. And this was not just a few people. This was like hundreds.
Yeah.
I know it's like well over 200, but at least 200 of these weddings in 25 years. So just 25 years between American heiresses and British aristocracy. So that was like, you gotta be kidding me. But it fascinated me because I thought this is just a really nutty reason to get married. But once I started learning about it, I thought this kind of makes sense. These were young women. They had plenty of money. They were never going to get accepted in New York society or San Francisco society because that was a big closed area too, or Philadelphia or Boston or any of those. So it was like, all right, you could roll the dice and you could marry into London society because they kind of needed the influx of money, or you could marry your father's junior partner. And you know, these are young women and they want to have fun. And that's not, I mean, if those were my two choices, I know what I would choose. I would probably say, yeah, go. But they were throwing the dice, and, you know, it all depended on what this man was like that they married. So I started imagining, well, all right, okay, so like 10 years after the wedding, let's take a look at this and let's see what this woman's life was like now. And that's why I ended up with 1899, because I thought she probably wouldn't have been one of the original pioneers to go out and forge this path. But I figured she probably got married around 1890. But it was a big thing. I'm going to show you a book just because I think this is so fascinating. This is obviously a reprint. Ooh. And I hope it's not really backwards. Are you seeing it backwards?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
This is what you would have actually bought from the newsstand in 1890. It was quarterly, and it's literally like a dating app, 1890 style. It gives you the beginning. It talks about the heiresses who kind of went before you, who already did this, because this has been going on since about 1874, 1875. Then they just have a listing of all the available titles. Men. And while it does not tell you if they're tall, dark, and handsome, it tells you what their title is, what their estate will be that they'll inherit, how old is this title, and where the family seat is, and if there's any income involved. So, you know, if you're looking for a really big title, you're probably going to be looking for someone who does not have much income so that they need yours. If you're shopping for a titled spouse. So it just amazes me. And this was printed quarterly from 1890 to 1893. So this was like a cottage industry. It was not just a one-off. Is that amazing? So I mean, can you see why I got really fascinated by this?
Yeah, I would have. I would have too. I've, you know.
Mm-hmm. So I was kind of locked into that time period, which I found is a fascinating time period, but it's not one that I had studied before, so I had to kind of learn everything new.
Fair enough. I like that time period. Like the social strictures are really interesting, and you really play with those in this one because even though George obviously doesn't have a first, I hope I'm not spoiling anything for anyone. It's not really his first wife.
It says on the cover, yeah.
Just the scent of the scandal would have been enough to ruin both of their reputations, and I think that was it's a really interesting period for that. Yeah,
it is. I think it's maybe a little bit marginally better than it used to be,
right?
Because earlier in that century, it was much easier to ruin your reputation. It gets a little bit harder, but yeah, something like that. And a man could certainly live it down a lot easier.
Of course.
A future bride would overlook any indiscretions of his, but a woman would have a much harder time with that. And while Frances is kind of, do I care? I don't know. She knows that's how she has to live, and she has a daughter to bring up, and she doesn't want to make things hard for her. So she has to kind of I don't know, I guess grit her teeth and okay, how can I deal with this? And she does manage to deal with it, but I won't go into the details about how she does that. But she's kind of clever.
She's super clever.
I wish I was that clever.
Same. I mean,
it's one thing when you write books and, okay, well, draft 4, you finally figure out how you're going to do this. But in life, it's like, no, you've got to. So I live vicariously through my characters.
Same, a little bit. Also, like, I keep sending them to cool places because I'm like, research trip. What's up?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I know, right? So you do the outline, but do you always stick to it?
No, I almost always stick to the crime. I hardly ever change who done it.
Okay.
But I do sometimes. And no, it's a suggestion. And I do worry, like how you said, you turn it in after you've written the book. I'll turn it in and I'll change it. So
right.
I hope you forgot about it.
I know, right?
So yeah, and the one I'm writing now, I'm as you write, ideas really do come to you. And sometimes for me also, the slower I write, the more ideas come to me. I don't know why that is, but if I'm really focused and getting through that first draft, which the first draft is, like you said, it's just all plot and dialogue.
Yeah.
The slower, the more interruptions I have, the more ideas I can think of. And it's like, oh, why didn't I think of that person as a suspect? So, okay, we're going to pencil them in. And it makes my experience better. So I'm hoping it also just makes the reader's experience that much more enjoyable as well. I hope so.
For sure.
Yeah.
I had a question, then I forgot it.
Oh, it's because I'm.
It's not. It's just literally like, oh, there it went. Would you ever consider writing in a different time period?
Yeah, but I'd probably be doing the same thing. I'd be like starting all over again. I would be really interested in probably the late 30s in Detroit.
Oh.
I think it would be really like my grandmother's era.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I think that would be really kind of a fun time. Well, all right, it would be really a difficult time.
Yeah, but
I
like
think
an
it would be
interesting time.
super cool. I know my grandmother, I'm Polish. My grandmother was Polish. She lived in Hamtramck, which if you don't know, it's a Polish neighborhood in Detroit, or at least it used to be when she was here. And there was the whole bathtub gin type thing going on, and they would just, in Canada, you actually could buy booze, but we couldn't here. So when the Detroit River was frozen, you could just drive right over it into Canada and either buy or sell whatever it was you were doing. But yeah, I kind of could picture like somebody who maybe is accidentally in that business and kind of playing between a relationship with the police and a relationship with the bootleggers. So we'll see if that ever goes anywhere.
I would read the heck out of that. I just want you to know.
Okay.
Like, I would love to read that.
Hopefully I can write the heck out of it.
I have no doubts. What kind of research do you find yourself doing? Do you find yourself reading a lot of books or like?
Mm-hmm. I do sometimes have to do that, especially during the pandemic when England was even more locked down than we were. I was trying for the longest time to get a hold of somebody at the Royal Opera House. That's what it was.
Oh.
A stupid reason. And I ended up writing around it, It's like, okay, you know what? I really don't need to know this.
You know what? Yeah.
But I wanted to really bad. And, it didn't matter if I was emailing, if I was trying to call or what, there was nobody there. So I had to end up turning to Google Books and seeing what I could find off there, and books. And yeah, a lot about the Russians this particular time, a lot of Romanov history. Boy, was that a bloody history. They were not nice people. I know people are very, there's a whole, I don't know if I call it category of organizations about, I don't want to say idealize, let's say idealizing the family. And, yes, it's terrible that the Tsar and all of his kids, for God's sake, were murdered, and his wife. But I hate to say they were asking for it, but and I don't mean it exactly like that, but my God, they were horrible people. For hundreds of years. They were the ruling family, and they were pretty ruthless, and they could have loosened some of the control and at least had a constitution or something, but they chose not to do that, and they had all this money, and basically they had all of the money.
Right.
And everybody else was just, trying to get by. So it was really kind of eye-opening to see, okay, this is really likely what the Russian people thought of them at that time, to kind of put yourself in their shoes. And no, I am not saying that they should have been shot. It's just that I could kind of understand the anger towards them, so that was a real eye-opener for this particular book.
Fair enough. Do you ever find yourself, because sometimes I find myself doing this, where I learn some stuff that I really want to work in, but then just can't, because you can't just information dump. But have you ever found something super fun that you wanted to use?
Gosh, something super fun that I want to use. Something that I want to use. I usually, yes, let's answer this. Definitely things that I want to use that I can't use. And I generally, because I blog, I get it out of my system by saying,
"Oh,
hey, here's all the stuff that I couldn't put in the book." And
that's a great idea.
So yeah, start a blog. Or, just articles. I did one for Crime Reads on the Romanovs, all the stuff that, would have been way too draggy to put in the book. It's amazing. I mean, like, you research and you get tons and tons of information. And let's say you have this much and you lose this much. And like I said, even those days that I was trying to get that bit of information about the Opera House, and then I finally said, why am I doing this? I really don't need it, So it's funny, but research is very interesting. So it's hard not to get caught up in it, and sometimes it can be hard to say, okay, put this down and get back to writing. Because it's time. You've got enough.
Yeah.
It is. I can go caught up in research. I'm sure you can too.
I love falling down a rabbit hole and learning random stuff.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. And I pick subjects or things that I'm interested in anyway. Mm-hmm. So then I'm like enjoying this crazy rabbit hole of all this stuff I'm learning.
Well, also you said you get to travel with yours too. I haven't been to London in a long time, and
you should go.
I 2022. Finally, I've been trying to go since 2019. The last time I was there was, I think, 2015. And I want to go. And to take them anywhere else, we have to be able to travel. And if I can't go, they're not going.
Yeah.
In case they didn't hear that.
How fast do you write your drafts?
I feel like I'm a really slow writer. I don't sit here and stare at the computer, but I'm just kind of slow. And about 4 hours at a time is pushing it for me. It's like, oh, that's kind of a lot, so I will put in like maybe 3 hours a day when I'm writing. And I can get as little as like 1,500 words, but generally about 2,000 words at a time. So I think I'm in a slow writer. No, I'm average.
I think you're average.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I've just been upgraded.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. That's about your speed. Is that what you're saying?
That's I think Mina House I did about 3,000 words a day, but everything else,
that's a lot.
It was a lot. But I think everything else since then I've done about 2,000. It's a reasonable amount. Your brain is not completely fried.
Yeah.
So I shoot for about 2,000 a day. And sometimes I don't hit it. Sometimes, like you said, sometimes it's 1,500, and then I'm like, all right, we'll take a walk and figure out what tomorrow is going to look like.
Yeah, it is nice though when you're really on a roll, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen every now and then. And I'm not even paying attention to my word count, but it's just I've got to finish this scene while it's still in my head and it's fresh, So you'll just go and go and go, and then it's like, yay, I did 3,500 words. Oh my goodness. So,
those
days are rare. Yeah.
Those are good days though.
They are.
Oh, we have questions. I know. Quite a few. I'm gonna start at the top, Kellyanne. We love that you described this book as keeping you company during the pandemic. Did you find writing during the pandemic during COVID was different than writing before?
I would say, yeah. I'll be curious to see what you have to say about this too. I went through cycles, and cycles where I was really productive and did a lot, and cycles where I couldn't even focus enough to read.
Yeah.
And it lasted long enough that I'd say I did each of those I cycled maybe 3 times through both. But both times, or all 3 times, it was either a book that I was reading or writing. You got to get it done. So let's get back on it. And usually it was like after I'd finished a draft. Yeah, now that I think about it, I'd finish a draft. And you know how, I don't know about you, then you go back to the beginning. And it's like, that's when I'd be like, oh, the despair, I really can't do this. I can't focus. And then I just kick my own butt and get back into it. So yeah, writing was definitely different. It was strange. What do you think, Erica?
It was so hard. I was so lucky that I had already written book 3. I don't know if I could. I applaud you. I really would have struggled. I think I had to do revisions, and that was it. But like you, I could hardly read anything. I did a lot of cross stitch. That's all I did is I watched comedies and I did cross stitch. And I did write something that was not in the series at all. And I showed it to my freelance editor, and she was like, "You're going to have to rewrite this entire thing." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But like day to day, I could only write like 500 words. Like I was not.
Yeah, I was with you at times. Yeah, like I said, it was cyclical for me, where I was either super productive or not at all.
Yeah, I was really nervous starting because I started writing book 4. I was super nervous that I was like, oh, what if like I'm still gonna? And no problem. We're back.
Oh, good.
We're back.
Good.
Yeah, and maybe I think it's because things have eased up enough that it feels okay. So the next question, and this is a great question. I really like this question. Who was your favorite secondary character to write?
Wow, I like a lot of them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with, because in this book I brought her back, was Alicia Stokely. She was just so bad that she's fun, and she just doesn't care,
She does
he's getting money from this group, the something whatever, group for humanity, who cares?
Yeah.
And you can just tell she doesn't care about anybody but herself. And yeah, it's kind of fun to write a bad person who is just a normal person, who is not the villain,
Yeah.
So yeah, Alicia was a lot of fun. I hope you all like her.
I actually am a big fan. I really like her for a lot of those same reasons. Like, she does not care.
Yeah. it's fun to write that person.
Yeah.
You know, because all these things, you know, you think of the nastiest thing you would think of, and you would never say that. And you just,
No.
she can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
For me, it's Aunt Millie in my books.
I like your Aunt Millie.
Well, she's based on my grandmother, who
Okay.
just really liked to stir the pot, just really stir stuff up, you know, and just would say kind of awful things.
There you go.
But it's fun. It's fun to write her. You know.
Yeah, because she's like the anti-you.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. God, I could never say that, but you know.
She can.
But she can. What's your favorite part of writing? The plot, the characters, or the dialogue?
I don't know. You know, I like them all. I guess, I don't know. What do you think? I'd say maybe characters. Why don't you answer this one first?
I love writing dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I love fun dialogue. I actually find that when I'm picking movies or like TV shows or stuff that I'm really drawn to, especially old movies. I love old movies with snappy dialogue. So I find that super fun to try to do.
True, but isn't that also character? I mean, not all of your characters can behave that way. So
That's true. Know. I think they tie together.
I think all of those elements tie together. And I guess, yeah, what do you like writing the most? Dialogue is the fun part to write. But I do love plotting too. All right. So you've got dialogue. I'm going to say plot.
All right.
We need a third person and we can put a book together.
Yeah. Perfect. So what was one of your favorite scenes to write from this book? That's a good question.
I almost always like my opening scenes the best.
Nice.
I probably rewrite them the most, and sometimes I just throw them out completely and start over, which I've done before. But yeah, from this book, I don't know. That was good. After calling them so many times, I enjoyed the scene at the Royal Opera House. That was fun too.
Good.
And yeah, this book was fun to write. It really was. But yeah, I'm going to go with the opening scene. They're almost always my favorite, and the first chapter in general.
Interesting. Mine, at least for the first two books, mine was the final scene.
Yeah.
Like the big final thing. I have so much fun writing that. I'm like, look at this big thing that's going to happen. Boom.
Yeah. That's good. That I enjoyed that as well. I don't have to rewrite that one, generally speaking. Do you have to rework it, or does it usually come out beautifully for you?
I mean, the whole thing has to be reworked, but
right. I understand, but I mean, did everything just culminate to that point?
Yeah, everything usually by that point. I don't have to go over that. I don't have to usually go over that too many times.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like your endings.
Thank you. I literally have so much fun writing them.
That's good then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Endings, beginnings. That's interesting, huh?
It is really interesting. Yeah. So here's another question. Do you have any favorite authors' books that inspired you?
I used to say back when I was still selling book one that I felt like what I had written in Frances was a character that could have been created. Let me see if I got that. Yeah, because I can lose names so fast. Edith Wharton and Janet Ivanovich had been able to collaborate. They might have come up with a character like Frances. So I would say those two, probably odd as they were probably an inspiration for this kind of a fun-loving Edith Wharton character, which there never was such a thing. if Janet Ivanovich was around, there could have been. So I would say those two. Honestly, it's definitely, I'm afraid I'm going to steal this from you. So I know we both really like her. I'll let you say
Fine.
it.
You can say it. You can say it.
No, go.
Ashley Weaver.
Oh, no.
Is that what you're going to say? Who were you going to say?
I thought you were going to say Jane Austen. I was almost positive you were going to say Jane Austen. Yeah. I love
Jane
Ashley
Austen.
Weaver.
Yeah, she was my big inspiration for writing the first book.
I can kind of see that.
I was reading Murder at the Bright. I was sitting on my back porch with my best friend who's a librarian. And we were both reading, and I was reading Murder at the Bright. I kept putting it down. I was like, I want to write something like this, but set in the 20s and in Egypt, clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was an inspiration for her. She was.
You knew right from the first book, you knew it was going to be set in Egypt?
Yeah, I knew the first one. I had put, like, my dad raised me on old black and white movies, and somewhere along the line, I picked up super romantic ideas about Egypt in the 20s. It's probably all that Agatha Christie, and the old Peter Ustinov movies, and just really romantic ideas about, like, the hotel and the pyramids and, like, the slow moving fans overhead, and then the elegantly dressed people, and then someone dies.
They traveled there all the time in the 20s, so yeah, I can see why that's a good location for that time, that era.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Do you find that, I always think this is interesting, do you find that you can read other books? Can you read fiction while you're writing?
Yeah, I don't. I maybe shouldn't, because I don't always get into it, but sometimes I have to. If you're going to give somebody a blurb or something, you've got to read it. I do tend to read more nonfiction, and this is while I'm drafting. Once I'm editing, I can read anything. Yeah. But yeah, while I'm drafting, I do tend to stick more with nonfiction. Are you saying you can't read fiction or what?
I can. The pandemic, my reading definitely has taken a big hit, but turns out, like, I can even read within our subgenre. Like, I can read other historical fiction, and it's not a problem for me. I just apparently I just shut my brain off. Like, I'm done writing, and now I'm just gonna go read, and that's fine. So
yeah, I do too. I think I'm just always afraid I will kind of start adapting, or it's like, let's just kind of go for something else here, just to be safe. Yeah,
that's fair. What inspired you or made you want to write books? Have you always wanted to be a writer?
No, I guess I feel like I always kind of have been a writer. It wasn't a want to. I worked in accounting for 30 plus years. And, prior to being an adult, I never thought of writing. I was just a reader, and I just loved it. But I think everybody I worked with had either, and they were really involved in this, had a hobby that was either very physical or very creative. And literally, I mean, I've worked with people, hysterical, who were like, God, I can't think of the word, not pro, obviously, but on hockey leagues and stuff like that, really physical stuff. But lacrosse, and I'm like, man, you know what? I'm gonna be creative. So I whenever I would, kind of tire of reading, I'd start writing, and so I wrote myself first drafts. All like for 20 years, spent 20 years of just writing first drafts to myself. And once I told myself the story, I was kind of done with it. And I really never had any urge to revise it or even revisit it. But I guess in a way that kind of like was practice leading up to it. And it wasn't until I retired that I thought, I wonder what would happen if I tried to revise one of these stories. I wonder if somebody might want to read it, somebody other than me. And that was the first one I ever revised, and it's the one that I sold. And it's the series that I'm working on now. So I guess I found out what happens if you do that.
That's super cool.
That's funny that you think that's cool. I feel like that's so nerdy.
I think it's super cool.
So what about you? Have you always wanted to write, or have you always wanted to be a writer?
I have always wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to write a novel, and I did not have the courage to do it until I sat down and wrote Mina House. I have a degree in English, but it was all like I had never done creative writing before. Before I think I had one short story that I had written before. But I read voraciously, like up until the pandemic, I read between 100 and 150 books a year, mostly crime fiction. So I'm gonna call that my schooling.
It's very good education, I think. You can't hope to write unless you're a reader. I don't think. You're just not going to learn it from guidebooks, or how-to books. You got to read.
You got to read. And then the second part of that question was, do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
You got to read.
You got to read.
That's one thing. I guess just do it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wish I had known when I was actually actively pursuing a book that I might publish. So one thing I hope other writers will know is you don't have to do it alone. There are writers groups out there, and there are so many organizations. Even if you just look at Sisters in Crime or Mystery Writers of America, and then look at all the subgroups that may be in your area, you'll find a lot of people just like you who want to write. And it's something you think you do alone, but it's a lot harder in a vacuum than when you have people to bounce ideas off of. And also when you are me and you meet somebody like Erica and you go, yeah, me too, I have so many similar things in common. You just feel that camaraderie, and it's great. I did not know until I sold my book. I'd never even heard of Sisters in Crime.
Yeah.
So I really wish I had known these things before then. So there's my advice. What would you say, Erica?
I have two. One is a little crude, and it's just puke it out. Just puke out the first draft, and it's going to be ugly, and it is maybe not going to make sense, and you're going to think this is garbage. But you have to get out of your own way and just get it on the page, because once you have something on the page, you have something you can go back and work with. You have something to revise. And the other piece of advice I got that has really stuck with me was to write what you want to read. Because I really wanted to read something set in the 1920s in Egypt. And so that's what I really wanted to read. And I wanted to read something that was fun and escapist. And I think that really comes through if you're writing something you really want to read.
I totally agree with that. And kind of like we said in the beginning, if I'm enjoying writing it, I'm hoping and I'm pretty sure that you're going to enjoy reading it.
Exactly.
So think of your reader. If you aren't enjoying it, will they?
Yeah, exactly. And then this question is, what's easier to write, openings or endings?
Well, as much as I like my I work the hardest on them. To me, they're a little harder to do. Endings, hopefully, everything just leads you there. And it's magic.
Yeah.
Not always. But they're still, to me, not as hard as openings. You as well?
Same. Yes. I rewrote the beginning to Mina House. I can't even tell you how many times I rewrote that beginning.
I've written like the beginning sentence of something, or the beginning paragraph, those very first words over and over and over.
Yes.
Until it's like, and then you're going to sleep and suddenly it hits you.
Oh, I know.
So fly out of bed. I better write this down immediately because I will never bring it back. But I guess they're super important. Sometimes if you don't grab them right in the beginning, they won't read further. So there's a lot of pressure on getting a good beginning.
It's true. It's true. I think we're coming to it. Yes.
Yeah, well, that concludes our questions from the audience. But I did have one or two final wrap-up questions for you guys, which is, I know that you both kind of teased it a little bit in the beginning, but could you guys tell us or a little sneak peek of what you have next in store? And then also, where can people find you to keep up with, news and whatever you're working on next?
Okay, I'll go first. Next. Oh. Okay, you're going to get by the title what's going on next. The next book in the series is A Bride's Guide to Marriage and Murder. And that's in the can. That's with Kensington. It will be out next July. And I will only say it's never a good sign when the police show up at your wedding. So I should tell you something.
Not great.
I'm kind of all over the internet, but if you want to find me in every place, you can come to one place, which is my website, and that's difreeman.com. difreeman.com.
Thanks.
I'll link that too in our chat for everyone.
Awesome. My second book came out in March. The third book is Danger on the Atlantic, and that comes out next March. That is set on a transatlantic cruise. And I'm currently working on book 4, which is set in Istanbul. I got to go to Istanbul. And you can find me on the internet as well, but probably mostly at ericaruthneubauer.com. Which I can type that. It's a lot of letters.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this event with us. And
thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure. So glad that we were able to do virtual events and host people from all over the country and have you guys join us. One last reminder for all of our people in the audience, if you haven't purchased either of these 2 books, you can do so by clicking that green Buy Books with Signed Personalized Book Plates button. That'll take you straight to our website. And if you want Erica or Dianne to personalize your book plate to you, you can just do so in the order comments when you check out. Thank you everyone for joining us and have a great night. We'll see you next time.
Thanks everyone.